We were waiting for the Egyptian ambassador, who has unfortunately not been able to make it. So we shall go through with this discussion without his presence, maybe on another round. What we were talking about, look, VL, as soon as, let's go through the cycle. Hosni Mubarak goes. Morsi of Muslim Brotherhood comes in. And when he comes in, the whole region, everyone, heaves a sigh of relief that the oppressive regime of Hosni Mubarak is over. Within no time, another counter-revolution is created. This one with the army support. The United States of America at this stage is divided. I don't know whether you recall, Ann Patterson was the American ambassador in Cairo. Yeah. The demonstrations, the second wave of demonstrations, had two placards as the villains. One was the American ambassador Ann Patterson and Barack Obama. And so, in other words, the State Department and the presidency was seen to be supporting Morsi. Different signals were coming from the Pentagon, and Chuck Hagel, the defense secretary, was on another. Eventually, what happened is, we know that General Sisi came on top, and as soon as he toppled Morsi, came Saudi Arabia with $8 billion right there. Look, please. And Bandar bin Sultan charged off to Moscow and says, I will give you the world if, Mr. Putin, if you can somehow do two things. A, support Sisi, and B, get Bashar al-Assad out. He said that.
Yes.
It is amazing that he did say that.
Yeah, this is the saying is, it goes like when you feed the mouth, the eyes shy away. So, but they couldn't do it with the Russian, because the Russians said, we have already bitten our hand in Afghanistan, we cannot repeat the same mistake. And secondly, I think what was happening in the United States, I think the Egyptian army realized the importance of retaining Egypt as one. You see, Ben Gurion, the Israelis' former prime minister, said, to survival of Israel depend on three things. The three army of Iraq, Syria, and Egypt should go. Then the existence of Israel is dominant in the region. Now Iraq is gone with the invasion. Syria in the process of the attacking, and they are destroying it. Egypt army is being driven into that kind of a trap, where the Egyptian realized that it is important to remove this extremist regime from power and bring back the army. And if you realize, the United States, yes, as you rightly said, they were giving bad signal. They didn't know what is the army up to. You know what's going on in Libya now? It is carried out by the Egyptian army. They are attacking sites of radical elements within Libya, where they have opened the armed stores to go an influx into Egypt, along with the Turkish, along with the Israelis, because they know that the militant groups of Muslim Brotherhood already armed themselves to the neck, and they are going to take on the army. So if that kind of polarization is taking place in Egypt, then segregation of Egypt could be. So to avert that, the army has stepped in, and I think the election was one of the most successful elections, despite the turnout that it has been less than 50%, but the general fact among the people that they wanted a change, and they wanted Morsi to come back, because they know Egypt, to regain its Pan-Arabism titles, it has to play the role of maintaining stability within the Gulf state, within the Arab world, and that is the fallout of Egyptian election and the coming president will have on the rest of the Arab world. And I think that is a very clear message for the United States, and that is where we see the Arab Spring, or what is called the West Spring, is now divided, whether it is really a spring by indigenous, or it is the people of now awakening, the second awakening of the Arabs about the plan. Because why I bring you back to Syria, many of the opposition figures who were in Syria also, they were outside, they are returning back. Why? They are saying because the agenda of the West is different from the agenda we are fighting for. We are fighting for democracy, for freedom of expression, for elections. What we are seeing, the West, they wanted to divide the country. Divide the country and rule. You know, in Libya now, it is better for the Europe to buy petrol from militant group on a token money because it's easy money to get, rather than allowing a proper channel through the international community. And I think this is awakening for India and China, that look, if they are taking the oil-rich countries in the world, including Syria, which having the 2/3 of the Mediterranean Levant gas in its territory, it is better for them to have militia.
No, what you said is what people do not know.
They have to know.
In fact, an aspect of the war, this particular war, is the discovery of vast quantities of oil and gas in the Mediterranean Sea.
Yes.
Which comes under the territorial claim of Syria also. That is part of this particular
Exactly.
conflict.
They go for the conflict is after their interest. Forget it that it is ideology. Forget it is democracy.
Therefore, both these elections, Moscow, Iran, Hezbollah, are squarely behind President Bashar al-Assad.
True.
All these three neutral, not overtly against the regime in Egypt. Am I right?
Yeah.
And but Saudi Arabia, where is it now?
Or the king himself immediately announced and congratulated to Sisi. The irony of the matter is the election taking place in Egypt, and they were all congratulated by the Gulf. The Syrian election is illegitimate. Ukraine election, 50% boycotted. It is illegitimate for the West. It is legitimate for Obama, but it is illegitimate in Syria. What kind of democracy values are we promoting in the world? Are we here just to see where your interest, you will say democracy should be in this place, and we have to dictate terms to the people? I don't think this is the term of the global international scenario. We should look at countries where you can have a humanitarian intervention which suits the West, and taking advantage of a country who is having the uphold the right of the democracy in the world, like India, for example. So these are the issues. One has to say spade is a spade, and it has to be decided, and the public should be aware. They avoided letting the people of Syria voting in different country because the public opinion in this country will turn against the propaganda machine they are doing. And that is what a British senator in fact said. He said, why should we listen to the belie of our government? We should listen to the public in the street. Why the people are voting voluntarily without being forced to go, whether they are in refugee camp, whether in Syria, whether in Egypt.
Tell me something, General. How interested is SARC in these developments?
If you recall, just about 3 days ago, we've had a very, very interesting article in our media, which talks about, which compares India's look east policy and says instead of just having a look east policy, it's about time India started having a look mid east policy. And that actually significantly sends out a message that actually the SARC has been ignoring West Asia for fairly long. There is a sudden interest, obviously, and very correctly economic-based, in the East. It's the China aspect which is at the center of all this. But notwithstanding that, the fact remains that as far as India is concerned and South Asia is concerned, you cannot wish away the Middle East or West Asia, because all that is happening there has a distinct influence on events which take place in the AFPAC region and continue to possibly go further east into our own areas. We have a huge diaspora there, from where we get a fair amount of money which comes into us. We get our energy from there. So stability of that area, stability of our diaspora existing there, all this is part of our national interest.
As an army man, you should know that the Pakistani army and the ex-soldiers, they send out a number of troops and armed police in Bahrain, in various parts of the Gulf and the Middle East. You know that.
Saudi Arabia particularly.
Saudi Arabia, they used to have a regular brigade once upon a time. But then that was discontinued because of the Shia-Sunni issue. That in those days, the Pakistani brigade also had some Shias, and which the Saudis did not want. So that was then. But now, of course, the Pakistanis are very much in the Saudi sphere of influence. How does that pan itself out in what is happening in the Middle East? How do we cope with that?
A short while ago, I think a couple of weeks ago only, we also had information of the possibility of a certain amount of funding being done for Pakistan by Saudi Arabia and the possibility of some of these funds through that route reaching out to the various militias inside Syria. Now that's a very interesting angle, where you find the entry of Pakistan. From that direction, funds, including arms and ammunition, possibly finding their way into the Syrian conflict. And Pakistan's footprint in that is going to have a serious effects probably there.
Well, I think there is a question of the Taliban. They are moving their headquarters from Afghanistan into Syria. Has been already on the news for some time. The talk of making on Islamic mercenaries training in Pakistan, 100,000 soldiers there, recruiting from Southeast Asia. I think these are alarming signals, which also has to be looked into the security apparatus of the whole region. Unless and until you really want to combat terrorism, or you are nourishing terrorism in this part of the world.
As usual, as the discussion warms up, time runs out. On that note, gentlemen, thank you very much. We shall resume this discussion another day, but at the moment, we have tremendous interest in the part of the world which we are discussing. In fact, let me end with a little story. I was in Bahrain, and the Indian embassy, the watchman, was a Baluch from Pakistan. The point I'm making is that the Pakistani mercenary army and armed police force is certainly all over Bahrain and the GCC countries. Now, not to be alarmed, but a fact to be taken note of. Thank you.